Good morning, Matt. How are you today?
Good morning, Fred. I'm very well. It's Thursday here in Tennessee. It's a little cold. I have a bit of a cold, but other than that, again, we spend another day trying to figure out what's going on with the markets. And
Tim's still traveling. I think he's away for another week and a half or 2 weeks.
God bless
He
him.
he did text me yesterday. He was in Spain, and
Okay.
the title of his text or title of his email was "Seinfeld has ruined me." Okay, let me open it up and look. He said, I was on a tour, and the tour guide was talking about the Moors invading something in way back when. He says, and all I could think of was, no, it's moops. It's not Moors, it's moops. If
Yes,
you remember
Seinfeld.
the old Seinfeld bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You
but
know,
he's doing well, and he'll be back soon.
so he made it
But
across the Atlantic, so that's good. That's one of the things.
well, now no, he comes back.
Oh, he goes
He
back
goes.
to the Atlantic. Oh,
Yeah, he flew to Spain and then he goes down to Brazil and Argentina and flies home from there. So interesting trip.
I had a
So
friend of mine who said he's doing that in a couple of weeks, going across the ocean. He said, "You should come." I said, I'll
yeah,
pass. I'll pass.
exactly, exactly.
Now,
We're not really.
I don't mind being on a cruise in the Caribbean, or being on a cruise like around Hawaii, or on the in the Pacific, going along Mexico, the Mexican Riviera. But you're close. I mean, the thought of being in the middle of the Atlantic. No, being on a boat for 6 days, I think I would have probably exceeded my Valium content in the second day.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is 22 days on and off the ship. God bless
No,
him. But
no, no, no,
yeah,
no. I wish him luck. I congratulate him, and I hope he's having a good time and enjoying himself. But I'll keep reading about the Seinfeld references and be very happy about that.
I'll keep you
And
updated.
just leave it about that. Leave it at that. I think
So
I think the election.
yesterday we had a little bit of a turnaround in the stock market. We saw some sell-off in stocks and treasury yields at least stabilized for now. They're not rising like they were. What are your thoughts?
I think with the yield market, it's become quite evident that we're not going to necessarily get a pause. But the thought of 50 basis points by the end of the year, 25 and 25, is probably what's going to happen. Um, Although I'll be honest with you, the way the Fed has handled this whole move, I wouldn't be surprised if they paused in November. Um, I guess you could make an argument either way. Remember, they'll meet the day after the election. I mean, they meet on Tuesday, election day, and
Right.
then on Wednesday. Could they be swayed by the election result? Better yet, in your opinion, I'll just throw a question quickly back to you. At 2 o'clock Eastern Time on Wednesday, November 6th, will we have an elected president, or will we still be counting ballots?
Well, I think in some states we will be counting ballots, and I think regardless of who wins, there's going to be litigation. I think they're going to go
Yeah,
back and
I
forth in the
mean,
courts to figure this out.
so
Between
and again, everybody, and I mentioned this. I actually, excuse me, had a conversation with a few ex-students a couple of days ago. They called to check how I was doing, and I said, everybody focuses on November 5th, which is what you're supposed to do. But then you have 2.5 months after November 5th
you're freezing up there, Matt.
before anything takes place. Now, given a Kamala Harris victory, things will pretty much stay status quo because they're staying within the Democratic Party. It's a Democratic administration handing off to another Democratic administration, of which she was the vice president. But certainly, if Donald Trump gets elected, there's all kinds of changing, all kinds of things, up for change. But even if those things occur, there's going to be a 2.5 month waiting period for them to occur. Now we all talk about these tariffs that are supposed to be added and how that's going to affect the U.S. dollar and everything else like that. Well, that's long term. That's maybe, again, 3 months from now. So
Right, and longer than
I
that.
think.
But by the time they were enacted and put in place, and
Oh no, no, I'm just saying once he's in
yeah,
charge. I'm talking about
yeah,
it's three, roughly 3 months. Today's
yeah.
October. Today's actually United Nations Day. How many of you remember that from
Oh,
your class?
that's right.
But
Don't remember
It
that
always,
one.
it always bugs me because when we were going to school, and I mean we're within a couple of years of each other. We were going to school. October 24th, United Nations Day was a big deal, and now it doesn't
Yeah,
even show up on the calendars.
yeah. I don't
So
remember that day at
I guess
all. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, see, that's me. I remember stupid days. What can I
You
do?
know.
But my point there is, you know, right now we anticipate what may happen on November 6th. We will not anticipate, but we will expect what will happen. So I think the markets over the last couple of days are sort of, you know, there's nothing wrong when you have a an equity market go up for 2, 3 straight weeks, and then it comes off for a couple of days. People take profits.
Hmm.
People trade. This is trading.
Yep.
You and I both know that. You could take a long position in a currency and hold it for a few days, but you're gonna after
Trade
I
around
mean,
it. Yep.
today is a Thursday. If you were off tomorrow and you had a nice position in pounds or in Deutschmarks or whatever, you might cut it out today and then say, okay, I'll start fresh when I get back on Monday.
Take a
So
look.
taking profits is not a big deal. The earnings support a good stock market. So I'd be surprised today if the stock market didn't rebound and finish in the green, as they call it. Um, Secondly, treasuries yields. I think the reverse is going to happen there. They've had a little bit of a nice run. Now it's time to ease up a little bit. And
I,
that goes
I
for
don't
the
know.
dollar as well. I mean, yesterday the dollar closed up for the 16th time in 18 days. Time to take profit. That's all.
I don't know if you saw it over the last week or so. Two major fund players, Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones, both came out with in interviews, and both pretty much had the same view, and it's the view that I've held for a long time. I know Tim has, and I think you have as well. Is that yields are going up regardless of who's president. The back end, the Treasury, inflation is here. That's it. We're not getting rid of inflation. We don't have a Volcker in order to fight that inflation mode. We have our debt is way too large in order for him to raise rates up to 13, 14, 18%. My first mortgage was 18% back in September of
Yeah, no, I
1981.
agree with
Yeah.
you.
So where we don't have that Fed, and they're also saying because of that, gold. So the two trades that I've been espousing for the longest time now is short bonds and long gold. We're seeing two of the biggest hedge fund players, most successful hedge fund players in the world, announcing that that's where they're positioned. So I think you see some profit taking, but can Treasury 10-year Treasury notes get back to 5, 6, 7%? I think it's inevitable. People think I'm crazy, but I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And I think if you look at the long end, mortgage rates are going back up. Excuse me, once the Fed started cutting, everybody figured, gee, I'm going to refinance and get a 3.5% mortgage. And no,
yeah.
that's not happening.
Well, we
Uh,
talked
I
about the other
think
day the
Federal
fact that
Home-
it was the 10-year was 376 when the Fed cut, and it was 418 the other day. So 50
yeah,
basis points lower in the front, means 50 basis points higher in the back. That's a big spin on the
exactly.
yield curve.
So I agree with that. And I don't, you know, back in 2019, if you remember correctly, Jerome Powell was raising rates to try to stem this inflation, and Donald Trump was screaming to lower rates.
Hmm.
I think their roles will be reversed if they, in fact, attain their same roles in a couple of weeks. I think Donald Trump will be espousing for higher rates.
You think so? No,
I think so. I think
I
so
think
because
he's.
I don't see how he's going to get these tariffs through without raising, without rates going up. I mean,
I think he
it,
wants the Fed to cut rates back to zero to throw money back into the economy and devalue the dollar. And then, our exports become cheaper around the world. I think that's his game. I don't see
you've
him.
spoken about that a number of times
Yeah.
about Trump wanting a lesser dollar. The official,
Right.
strong dollar policy is we know has been nonsense for 50 years. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I look at the world and I look at the world's economies and all the PMIs that have come out in the last couple of days. Everything is underperforming. Everybody's under 50. Everybody's in recession. Um, Again, like I said. our timing, unfortunately, is a little off because we probably won't speak long enough to get to the PMI release today. It's at
Right.
9:45 Eastern. But I think if our PMI numbers are better in comparison to the rest of the world, Eurozone, Germany, certainly Japan, Australia, etc., UK, I see, I see the dollar continuing to strengthen. Bank of Canada cut rates 50 basis points yesterday. You know, the euro espousing euro speakers and continue to talk about they're going to continue to lower rates, continue to lower rates. Uh, Bank of England is trying not to dip, but they're going to have to. The
But I
only
think we all agree that the U.S. is the best looking horse in the glue factory. You know,
Right,
we
so
don't
that
use
means
that
to
term,
me, no, that's a
but
great term, and you're right. You want to call it the best of a bad lot, you can do that. I don't think the U.S. economy is a bad lot, but I just think when you look at all of these things, I have a funny feeling this is going to, I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised after all the hoopla over the 50 basis points and all the conversations about making another 50 basis points in the last two meetings, November and December. But if you look at the numbers, and I wrote it in the commentary today, if you had a chance to read it, the percentage of people expecting those 50 basis points to occur in November and December has come down to like 65% from 85% 2 weeks ago. So I never am surprised by anything that the Fed does because I think sometimes in these markets you need a bit of a shock value. You need a bit of a shock value. I wouldn't be surprised if the Fed holds rates steady on November 5th, on November
I
6th,
think
excuse
they
me.
have to at
I
this
wouldn't be
point.
surprised
I
at all.
mean, the bond market basically laughed in their face. So I think the Fed, is going to be forced. We had priced in 9 cuts, right? That's
Well,
what they
keep
had
in mind,
priced in
keep
right
in mind,
before the first
the
round.
bond market is laughing in their face. But as the Fed cuts rates, what does that do to the banks? What does that do to lending rates? That lowers lending rates. Obviously, we don't see it anymore because we're not sitting in trading rooms and they don't make a big deal about it anymore. But what used to happen the moment the Fed cut or raised rates? Boom, Citi lowered their prime, Chase lowered their prime, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They all followed each other. So lowering rates at this point would continue to stimulate lending, maybe not on the long end, but talking about prime lending, corporations. Um, so if they decide to pause, it could have some sort of, I don't know if you want to use the expression, ripple effect, a little bit. I don't know. I think the market would make more of it than needs to be made. I,
Well,
I I don't think you can.
Tim and I have talked about it a lot, and my whole premise on the stock market is bad news has always been good news for the stock market. Bad news
Yeah.
means the Fed's going to cut cheaper money. People are going to have more money available. Buy stocks. It's the whole inflation trade, whether it's housing prices, equity prices, metal prices. Things are inflating when there's more money around. But
Excuse me.
there's going to come a point where bad news is really bad news, right? And the idea of
Yeah.
a Fed bailout is not going to really be good for the equity markets, and it's not going
Right.
to be
That's
good for
true.
the dollar.
But
Bad news is going to be bad news around.
keep one thing in mind. We've gone through an inflation, we've gone through a pandemic, right? We've had
Hmm.
we've gone through some really rocky times in the last, let's go back to 2016 to make my point. In 2016, when Donald Trump was elected president, I don't believe anything has to do with anything. It's just a focus, all right? In 2016, the Dow was at 16,000. In
Right?
2024, 8 years later, having nothing to do with who's been in the White House, the Dow is at almost 40, has reached 43,000 and now is at
Yep.
42,000. S&P records, Nasdaq records. So we as an economy, have continued to churn up. Now, granted,
But
all the
that's
free
asset
money,
inflation. That's
I'm just
just
saying,
asset inflation. Yeah.
all the free money given during the
Yeah.
pandemic
Yeah.
helped. We've talked about this 1,000 times. We all worked from home during the pandemic, and
Hmm.
thank God We all made it through. But more important than that, I don't remember your company. I certainly don't remember Monmouth University saying to me, "Oh, listen, you're working from home, so we're going to cut your salary by 30%."
I have heard
Everybody
some
made.
people. No, I have heard some of that, but continue with your point. But I have heard some people saying
But
that you don't
my
have to
point
come in.
is that we've become an economy from the beginning of the pandemic to now, even where we have way too much spending power. I guess that's the best way to put it. When you took the 2 years, just to round it out, the 2 years of being home for the pandemic, all that extra money coming in was not being offset by all that extra money going out: commuting costs, lunch costs, dry cleaning costs, for our lady friends, makeup costs, all of these kind of things. You just didn't do it. How many people do you know that work from home grew a beard?
Right.
Talking about the guys now. I mean, grew a beard. All right. Why? Because nobody cared. And
Right.
how many of those people cut their beards? The problem that I see here is that we're getting, I don't know if the word is stagnant, but maybe the word is lazy. You know, all of a sudden, everything going on around us, we talk about it, but the overall country doesn't seem to. Nobody seems to care what's really going on, with the exception of people who have relatives or whatever. I mean, the country as a whole doesn't care what's going on in the Middle East. The country as a whole doesn't care what's going on in Ukraine. And let me tell you something: the country as a whole doesn't care what's going on at the Mexican border. All
I
right.
disagree. I think people very much care about what's going on in the Ukraine. Just the fact that we're spending, 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 and we have the possibility of sending troops there.
But all you
Same
hear
thing.
about is that the negative people towards the Ukraine are saying what some people consider to be logical. Why are we sending all that money there when we have problems in North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee and Florida over hurricanes? They have to wait. We have to fix what's here. I can't argue that. I really
Right.
can't.
Right.
Why are we sending aid all over the world and we have armed forces veterans living on the street? We're not taking
Yeah.
care of the people who protected us. I mean, you can get all kinds of crazy political about this stuff, but
Yep.
I think what's happening now, and we talked about this before. We said it off air before we started about the polls, the CNBC poll, which they made a big deal about today. That the race is a dead heat right now. When we talked the other day about betting in Great Britain, Donald Trump holds, I guess, what you'd consider to be a sizable lead in those people putting money
Yeah.
where their mouths are. Uh,
Was it
but I
53,
mean,
46 or something like that? 54, 46?
here it's 48, 46. He's in front. Um, they keep on talking about. I don't know, the battleground states. It seems to me that he has taken a little bit of a lead in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and I think that's going to bode well for him. I think more importantly, and we've discussed this also, I think it's going to bode well for the Senate and the House. It seems to me like and correct me if I'm wrong. There's a groundswell occurring right here. I read an article the other day that one of the New York representatives not running right now said that he honestly believes that New York could end up with adding a couple of more Republican seats in the House. I mean, we both grew up.
Yeah.
That's blasphemous when you think about it, right?
You go
You
back,
know,
yeah, you go back to the Lindsay administration, right?
yeah,
With the exception,
that's what
with
I'm
the
saying. So,
exception of Giuliani, it's been all blue. Yeah.
so when you think about that, for some reason, nobody made a big deal. And I'm just throwing this out because I read it right before. Come on, North Korea has sent troops to Russia. There are North Korean troops in Russia. Well, I mean, would a big deal be made if the Canadian Army had sent troops to the United States to train together, or if the Japanese Army sent troops to the United States, or the Royal Navy came to work? You know what I'm saying? But for some reason, it's not being paid attention to.
Well,
and
it
it's
goes back
something
to the terms,
serious.
the axis of evil, right? Wasn't that the term that
I
Bush
mean,
coined way back when in 2000, the axis of evil?
it is. I mean, when you think about it, it is. I mean, China doesn't seem to get involved in these things. China's like the sleeping giant that nobody wants to. I don't mean this as a joke, but nobody wants to poke the bear when it comes to China. All right, but North Korea and Russia are playing together, and that concerns me. That very much concerns me.
Yep.
All right, and it concerns me right now because, and again, we try not to be political here, but I don't know who's in charge right now. I really don't. No, no, no. I mean, I'm not saying that to elicit joking or things like that. I think Joe Biden is still in charge, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, you keep hearing about him trying to undermine Kamala Harris. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Forget about your affiliation, but if you're a Democrat, do you want to hear those kind of things? That's absurd.
Well, you go back to some of the big Democratic donors, Bill Ackman, another big hedge fund guy, big supporter of the Democratic Party for many years, has come out and supported Trump. He's abandoning the Democratic Party for
Well,
some of the things that they've done, and it mainly is their non-support of Israel, from what I've been reading. So,
well, I've spoken to a number of people, both Republican and Democrat, and I'm surprised sometimes. How could you say that Kamala Harris doesn't support Israel? Her husband's Jewish. That's the response I get. And I say, no, I'm not denying that her husband's Jewish. What I am saying is, I haven't heard her say, we'll do everything we can to protect Israel. I have heard the other guy say that. All right?
right.
I mean, you know, all the lunatic other things he might say, I have heard him say that. And what surprises me is that the people that I keep in contact back in New Jersey and in the religious side of the state, Jewish leaders, rabbis, and people of that nature, they're still firmly behind the Democrats. In other words,
Really?
he has alienated so many people so deeply that I truly believe if she came out and said, well, we're going to have to rethink our position in Israel, and he came out and said, if I'm elected president, I will give 100% support to Israel, they would still vote for her. I'm, and again, I've taken the position, and I spoke about this with a friend of mine yesterday. You don't argue with people because I shouldn't say you don't discuss things with people because the discussion becomes an argument, whether you like it or not, whether you want it to or not.
Right.
You know, I mean, we both know. Just to step aside a second, you're a diehard Met fan, right? We both know I'm a diehard Yankee fan.
Right.
I'd like to think, considering you're a New Yorker, you're going to be rooting for the Yankees in the World
Of
Series.
course.
Because
Of
I'd like
course.
to think if the Mets were playing the Guardians, I'd be rooting for the Mets in the World Series.
Right.
But I mean, Yankee Met fans is almost like what our country is right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
We're on the verge of a civil war. Absolutely. It's sad to say.
I have friends on both sides who worry. Not you made the comment earlier in the broadcast about whoever wins, the other side sues. All right, I keep hearing whoever wins, the other side fights. You know,
Well, it depends on how you term fight. Fight in the
well, I've
courts.
had
Yeah.
I've had
Yeah.
friends say to me that they believe if Harris wins, there could be civil war in the United States. I dismiss that as being
Yeah.
lunacy, to be honest with you. But you don't think that? I mean, look what happened in Portland and Minneapolis before. If Donald Trump wins, you don't think there'll be riots in some of the bigger Democratic cities?
I
And the
think there'll
problem
be
is that,
sponsored riots.
well, the
Sponsored
problem is
riots.
that people
I,
say, well, if he's elected president, he'll squash that. And that's when I go back to the fact that if he's elected president on November 5th, he can't squash anything till January 20th.
right.
So you're going to have 2 months worth of looting and rioting and burning and everything. And I still believe, and and I'm not trying to, go crazy here, but I still believe that there was some sort of coup. Joe Biden should have resigned the presidency back when he decided not to run, because When Lyndon Johnson decided in 1968, I shall not seek and I will not accept,
Right.
he still was president,
Right.
and he still acted like a president.
Right.
And Hubert Humphrey ran on the primaries and against Robert Kennedy, and Hubert Humphrey, after unfortunately Bobby was shot, Hubert Humphrey got the nomination and ran against Nixon and lost. And when that happened, riots didn't break out. I mean, the most contested election before the Trump Biden elections was the Bush Gore election.
The hanging Chad.
Right.
Yeah.
The hanging Chad. Did violence erupt? Were there riots in the streets over that? No. I mean, I don't know what's happened to this country in the last 10 years. I really don't. You want to blame social media? That's a cop out. I'm sorry, that's a cop out. True, we get to find out more things more quicker than anything, but you know, there's no return. There's no return to civility in our lifetime, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, people have gotten very angry about certain things. I've said all along that the last 4 years made me question everything, everything. The idea about the vaccines, the idea that elections. There's nothing I trust. I don't trust the media. I don't trust the politicians. I don't trust the economists. I don't trust the big corporations. There's things in our food that's not in the Europeans' foods. So I don't trust anything anymore. It's all been a lie. And your point about social media, I think eyes have been opened. And I brought this point up during the pandemic. I was having a conversation, a civil conversation with someone in the UK back, I guess it was 2 years ago, and she was a lobbyist, and she was very anti-Trump, anti-Republican. I said, I want to listen to you. I want to hear your points. And after she made her points and everything was valid, I said to her, who would you be more angry at? The person who lied to you or the person who exposed the lie? I said, which one would you really be more angry about? And she dismissed it completely. But I think that's the true question we've gotten to now. Who are you more angry at? The person who lied for the last 10, 15, 20 years, 50 years, or the person who exposed it?
Go
And
back
when
to
somebody exposes the lie, it just means you feel like you've been fooled for the last certain point and you can't admit it.
right, and
That's where I come down into human nature.
go back to the pandemic. I mean, to be vaccinated, to not be vaccinated. Think about the people you know, yourselves included, maybe. How many people do you know that got vaccinated that got COVID? How many people do you know that didn't get vaccinated didn't get COVID? You know, um, so should you? I mean, and forget about their ages for the moment. Obviously, they made a big deal about seniors getting vaccinated. You know, but people didn't get vaccinated and didn't get COVID. People did get vaccinated and did get COVID. Some people didn't get. I never got COVID, thank God. Now COVID, if you get COVID, it's just a flu.
Right.
All right, but Patty got COVID. I didn't get COVID. I remember my friend literally screaming at me, "What do you mean you're going to go sleep in the same bed as her?
Right.
You should be sleeping in the other room. You should move into a hotel. She's got COVID." Wait a minute. When you were younger, if
Yeah.
Timmy got chickenpox, did your mother tell you to go sleep in Timmy's room so you'd get chickenpox? Right?
Exactly.
Now, granted, that was 60 years ago, but my
That's right.
point is, you know, I went and visited a friend in Florida. I saw the last time I saw Timmy, I was visiting some people in Florida it was around during COVID. I stayed in a friend's house, and then I was going to stay at another friend's house. And the second friend said to me before I went to stay at his house, I had to take a COVID test. It almost cost the friendship.
Right.
But I figured, just like politics, COVID wasn't worth it. Anyway, I think we're coming up on a deadline.
Yeah, we've run our time.
I noticed we
Yankees in
both were orange
six. What
today.
do you think? Yankees in six?
I think this one's going to go to hole seven. I really do. I think
Really?
I think I'll have a better gauge on what's going on after I see how Garrett Cole pitches. I mean, in the old days, Garrett Cole would pitch the first, fourth, and seventh games, but that doesn't. No, he's not Bob Gibson. That doesn't happen anymore. So I think the Yankees win the World Series. I think net they're
Who's
better.
does it start in the Bronx or does it
Up
start
in
in New York?
L.A. and L.A. had the better record. So tomorrow
So
night,
it's
8 o'clock
two
on
two in
Fox.
L.A.
Yeah, tomorrow at 8 o'clock on Fox. Is it two? I'm not sure if it's 232 or 22111. I have to check that, but it's definitely 2-2 to start.
Right. The
LA gets it
previous
first.
series was the previous series
Yeah,
was 2-3-2.
right. LA gets it first, and again, they had 96 wins. They deserve it. The biggest thing the Yankees have to worry about is not getting the Dodger eighth and ninth hitters on. So you can pitch to Otani if there's nobody on base,
Right.
and if he hits a home run, it's a run. But
Right.
if you got second and third, first and third, and you got to pitch to him, there's the 3-run homer, and then you're in the dumpster fire.
The guy
So
that killed the Mets was the shortstop.
yeah, Edmonds.
Evans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's great. It's the 12th time they're playing against each other. Apparently, there'll be roughly seven potential Hall of Famers on the field this year.
Yeah.
Doesn't It comes close to the 1996 World Series with the Atlanta Braves and the Yankees when there were eight actual Hall of Famers on field.
Right.
But
Andrew
it's going to be fun.
Jones,
It's East
Chipper. Yeah.
West, New York, LA. It's
Yeah. Fox
you
has
keep
got to be
that.
happy about it
Well, it's a lot
because I
better than.
think if it was Mets Yankees, it would alienate the other 49 states.
Well, Mets Yankees, nobody watch it outside of. I mean, they get a great
Yeah. That's
viewing
what
in
I'm
the New York
saying.
metropolitan area, but
Yeah.
other than that, who
The
cares?
rest of the
Now,
country would turn it off. So now at least they got two coasts. Yeah.
well, when we speak sometime next week, we'll see what happens. I still think the Yankees in seven.
Okay. I think the
But
Yankees in
one last
six.
thing I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I thought it was funny. They were advertising all of these American League champion shirts, and a
Right.
friend of mine said, "You're going to buy one?" I said, "No, true Yankee fan buys that. There's only one shirt you buy: World Series champion. If they're not the World Series champions, who gives a rat's?"
That's
End of story. Have a great weekend. When are you
you
driving back?
too. Probably Sunday.
Have a
Probably
safe
Sunday.
drive, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks. Take care, Matt. Bye.
Bye bye.